Alright, here is the fourth screw. It's much prettier than the other three. I'll get these in place. Right, they're all in position. I'll just tighten them up. Now you've got the felt light trap and the leather bellows between you and the metal plate that all holds together, so don't go mad doing those screws up. It's never going to feel exactly tight. There's the front standard all in place. That's quite good, and I can assemble my focus mount into it at this point. So the inner and outer helical, I want to get those assembled and then check my alignment and move it accordingly. I'm just making sure I've got my 2 lines here and 2 lines here. They're the original ones that the previous person had made. I'll just rotate that another point spot or two. Yes, that is the right one. Right, another position. No, another one. What I'm doing is I'm backing this up one position at a time until I get those alignment marks lined up when the inner and outer helical front surfaces are level with each other. Now I've gone one too far the wrong way. Try that. That's it. At that point the front surfaces are level with each other. My alignment marks are lined up. So I know that's where it came from originally, and that's where it needs to go back. So I'll need helical grease and find the screws that put all this together. Right, a little bit of helical grease. So I'll just back this out most of the way. Usually apply the grease in about 5 or 6 spots around the outside. And work that in. Check that it all runs smoothly. You don't need to absolutely cram the threads with grease. That's counterproductive. You'll just end up making it stiff. I'll just run some around there, and where it runs over these 2 pins I'll put a touch in there. Now I had 2 scribe lines towards the bottom and 1 at the top, so I know which way up this goes in the mount. Drop that down in there and check that it moves smoothly. It does. Because I've got the helical grease handy, I'll just run some around the inside edge of the retainer. The retainer can go in there. Now with the screws, there are 10 screws all the same size. 4 of them hold the focus scale ring in place. 6 of them hold this retainer plate in place. You want your 4 best ones to be holding your shutter, your focus scale ring in place. It's much less important that these ones be pretty, or indeed even be in good shape. they'll still work well even if they're a bit damaged. But the ones on the focus scale ring need to be good, otherwise they won't grip the edge of the focus scale ring very well, or at all. It's not a problem with this particular camera because everything is in very good order generally. Now I'm lifting the camera off the table here. I'm supporting the front standard between finger and thumb so that I'm not pressing down on the struts and bending them, because that's what we came in here to fix. Now the focus scale ring can go in place. I've got the marks I made here for alignment purposes. I can also see the indentations where the screw heads fitted previously, so I've got a double helping of alignment marks there. These screws do not need to be very tight, they just need to be nipped up and no more. If you go crazy and do them up tight, you'll end up distorting the outer helical and then the focus will be unusually stiff. Checking that moves freely, and it does. That's good. Here is the rangefinder coupling arm on the plate that fits on the front of the inner helical, so I'll get that seated in position. Two screws, one at the top, one at the bottom. These are small screws, smaller than the ones that held everything else together. Snip those two screws up. Now there's one screw here to go in the arm. And this is the screw head here. Get that back out from where it's fallen into the body. Let's get that back. This pulls the arm of the rangefinder forward. So that as you move the focus scale ring, you'll see that that pin moves backwards and forwards. Now looking at this, I can see that the pin doesn't move all the way to the front of the slot here, but it is on the ramp, the curve of the track at the back. That means that the pin's not working in a straight line. Now that's to do with this being slightly bent. I suspected it was slightly bent and it looked close enough. I thought it wouldn't make any difference. Well, I can tell you that that probably would make a difference, and what the difference it would make is because of the way that arm moves, it would mean that the rangefinder would be difficult to get adjusted so that it tracked correctly at both infinity and at a close focus subject. And basically what it means is that the front here is bent too far back, so that the arm is running too far back and it's running around the curve of that track. So I just need to bend that back the other way. And how would that happen? Well, we know that the camera has been we surmise that the camera has been dropped. We know that some damage happened to the camera and in particular to the struts. So it's probable that that damage happened all at the same time as a result of the same incident. So I've moved that slightly with my pliers, and I want to see if it's made a difference to the way that moves. Yeah, that's certainly improved. It comes forward in the slot now. That's good. And the action's nice and smooth too, so that's all good. Now I'll put a bit of synthetic grease into this slot. When the front of the camera is collapsed, this arm has to go somewhere. And the arrangement of that slot is such that when you collapse the camera, that arm rolls back out of the way. And as it comes forward, the pin on the top here comes back in front of the rangefinder arm to couple with the rangefinder. That looks good. I think the front door could go back on there. I'll just dust that out. I've got to look at the shape of this because we know it was loose on the front. These arms are probably bent outwards slightly. One worse than the other, I think. Just give them a little bit of a straighten. Trying to make sure that I've got everything fairly symmetrical. Yeah, I can certainly see that they've got a slight bend on them. Not much. I'll just try that loosely in position. I've got to find some washers for that anyway, some paper washers. Yeah, that's an appropriate fit. So I need to find some cartridge paper washers. I'm sure I've got some made. I'll take a bit of synthetic grease, put it on those pins, top and bottom. And that should hold my cartridge paper washers firmly in position. These ones I made myself, and they're not exactly as good as they would have been if they'd come from the factory. But finding paper washers for cameras 70 or 80 years old is probably tricky. Let's get that sprung into place. Now, there was a shim washer or two on that door. And I have two washers here. One or both of those probably did that job. And that one certainly did. I've got that washer sitting correctly. No, I haven't. It's fallen out of place. Okay, start again. This time. Yes, there's certainly play there, so it certainly did require a washer top and bottom by the looks of it. So we have the other one, we'll put that in here. Just checking I've got that correctly positioned, that it hadn't slipped over to one side. Alright, does the front open and close smoothly? It does, that seems good. And the front should be well supported now. If these pins on the door, top and bottom, are loose, if they've been bent outwards in other words, they'll be rattled in this direction, up and downwards here. And you get a couple of things from that. One of the problems is you'll find your shutter release is a little bit unpredictable. You never know exactly where in the stroke it's going to release the shutter, depending on how much this is floated up and down. You can also find that your rangefinder image can be affected. If the float between the front plate here and the camera body is too great, it just allows the whole thing to move up and down, and it will affect your rangefinder. So you don't want this floating, and it is supported by these arms on this front door. You can't just take that front door off and have a good functioning camera. There isn't anything supporting the front plate here in the upwards and downwards position. Right, so that part's done. That's very good. Now I've got it at that stage. I can put some grease into the slots top and bottom here. Of course it doesn't need much, and most of it's going to come off again. In your fingers, first time you open and close the camera. But it has made quite a difference. That front pops now. I could get it to pop a little bit better if I applied some upwards and downwards force on this door, effectively stretching these arms further apart, but I'm quite happy with the way it works at the moment. The door's done. Film advance next for this camera. Before I put the film advance in, I should probably deal with these sheared off screws on the tripod socket at the bottom, because the surround was missing. The screws here are obviously sheared off. So I've got to see if I can unscrew them. There's no special reason to think they'll be tight in the threads, but getting a grip on them is tricky. If I just squeeze them with my pliers, I'll probably end up just making a mess of them. This one here in particular is folded over, so that could be fun to get out. I don't want to have to drill them out. That would be a messy indeed. There, this one's well folded over. What it means was that the camera was on a tripod and the camera was twisted, and most of the binding force was down on that surround, and it just sheared off these two tiny screws. So that one's just popped out. I don't know what the thread is going to be like in there, but that screw just popped out. That was the ugliest of the two. Possibly I can get the other one loose. Not like that, I can't. It does have a slot across there of sorts, so I should be able to get the screwdriver to engage in that. It doesn't want to. I'll have to file that down flush, I think, and see if I can push it out the other way with a drill bit. Trouble, trouble, trouble. I'm going to try drilling into that screw from the back, and hopefully the drill will bite and drive it out. It's whether I can get the drill started in the middle is the question. It's wanting to walk off. The screw is chrome brass, so it means that it's very hard on the surface. Won't be so hard inside. It's just not getting a bite at all. I've got some carbide bits here somewhere. I'm going to have to find them. Right, so I've got a 1.1mm carbide bit here, which hopefully will get a bite on that screw. Okay, it's cutting. What I really want is for the screw to bite, the drill to bite into that screw and drive it right out of the hole. It may be going to do that for me. And I'm watching very closely to make sure that all the shavings coming out are golden coloured, but they're brass. I don't want to see any aluminium in those shavings. I'll see if that screw's loosened up any from that. Doesn't appear to. Oh, it's turning. It's going to come out. That's it, it's out. It's because it's up against that raised lip there and it was bent over, it meant it didn't want to rotate. Okay, well that looks like it's good. I managed to do that without breaking a drill bit. And that's a major achievement, I can tell you. Put that drill back and it's set. I need to find 2 of the original screws that held that surround in place and check that that thread is still good. It certainly is on one side, I can see it, it looks good. I'm less certain about the other one, but it's probably okay. And the pieces of screw that came out from there, well, they're pretty small. There's not much to see there. Just tiny little stubs. Alright, back shortly. Well, here I've got a tripod socket surround fitted to the tripod socket, and I've run 2 of the screws in there. These are the longest screws from the 3C series really, and they stick out too far at the back. Now on one side that's no problem at all, and one side that falls over here, it's clearing everything, it's not a problem. The other side it fouls things, so I'm going to have to shorten those screws up because I don't have any of the short ones that were fitted to the Retina IIa cameras. So at least I've got the screws, and more importantly I know that the thread in the tripod socket here is good. It hasn't been stripped out or damaged beyond usefulness by those screws having been sheared off. The tripod socket surround is a bit of a neat fit round there. It makes me wonder whether a poorly formed tripod screw had been forced in there and that had caused the problems perhaps when they came to get the camera off the tripod. However, we've got the parts we need, that's the main thing. So what I've done there is put the screws in position, screwed them down, and now I'll just take a Dremel and bowl the back of those screws off to where I don't need it and get rid of that excess length.